this works tonight. I guess I have to make Brother Bill's little note that I put on there a little bigger. He couldn't read it, he said.
Yeah, Brother Darrell was back there Sunday when Brother Bill said, "Okay, I didn't see nobody."
He didn't have his eyes open?
Yeah. Well, he said he didn't watch it till late.
Yeah, he watched it till late.
We're on Exodus, 19. I got Exodus 18 at the top. I forgot to change it. But I changed the title. The nation of Israel comes to Mount Sinai. Exodus 19, 1 and 2. In the 3rd month, when the children of Israel were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai. For they were departed from Rephidim, and were come to the desert of Sinai, and pitched in the wilderness, and there Israel camped before the mount. So now we're given another time point, okay? The last time point we was given was 30 days. They'd been there 30 days. Now it's been in the 3rd month. So at least 60 days, okay? It had gone at least, being in the 3rd month, that's sometime in that 3rd month. You know, it may not have finished, but it's sometime in there. It says it took them, and here he says, took them 3 months of trusting God to get to this place, but they finally arrived. They saw God's deliverance from Egypt, received his guidance on the way to go, saw his glorious victory at the Red Sea, received his miraculous gifts of food and water, and they saw a prayerful victory over the Amalekites. And I think last week I was remembering what I said. I think I said it wrong. I think I said it was Keturah, Abraham's descendant, and it is a descendant of Abraham, but the Amalekites came from Esau. When I went back and looked at and that's, I think he was Amalek was a grandson of Esau. You had, the 2 twins that was born, Jacob and Esau, and so he was on that side. So that's kind of where that came from. Correct that. I think I said that to somebody. I thought I said it here, but I may not have. And they are heading now, or they are going to Mount Sinai. It says Israel stayed in the wilderness until Numbers 10. Now, it doesn't tell us time-wise, but here they tell us 57 chapters of the scripture are devoted to what happened to Israel in the year they camped at Mount Sinai. So later on in the story, we'll hear another time frame that'll tell us when he tells them to move forward, to move on. And they will be here at this mountain a year, okay? So that gives them quite a bit of time. That gives us a little idea of how they move. One of the authors' commentaries that I saw said whenever they did move, they would move 5 to 7 miles a day. It's really quite a feat for that many people to move. So, in today's society, I don't know how many people could even walk 5 miles, let alone 7 miles. So, I mean, in their days, that's what they did. They walked when they went places. But in our day, that's not the way we go. And that's why it took quite a while to get from one place to another. And many times we talk about, they have different wildernesses that they talk about. We talked about earlier the wilderness of Zin, the wilderness of Sin, the wilderness now of Sinai. It says this wilderness, the word translated wilderness is not necessarily a sandy desert, but it's just open grazing country where nobody's out. No man settled it. So you're out there among the crickets and the wolves and whatever that's out there. You're just out in the wilderness, basically, is what it's trying to say. So it tells us that they were there in this one place. It took them this time to get there. It also took them this time to hopefully had built some confidence in God. They reached all their places, you know, when they went to the Red Sea, first of all the plagues, and then the Red Sea, and God provided for them. Then they needed water, God provided for that. They needed food, God provided for that. They were attacked from behind from the Amalekites. They were, bushwhacked, you want to say? God provided then for them. And Moses held up his rod, and they defeated them. God is trying to push them into faith, push them to believe into Him. And we see it works for a little while. When they got the quail and they got the manna, the bread from heaven, it satisfied them for a little while. But then a little later, then they start complaining again. Seems like each time they get something, and now they're, quote, satisfied, they want something else. They remember what they had back in Egypt that they don't remember the torturing, the getting beat and getting whipped and having to work, so many hours a day, each day, every day. Now, also Sinai is the place where Moses saw the burning bush. If we go back, and I don't have my map here, but if you have your map, you can look at it, and that eastern edge of where the Red Sea is at, that is where we're calling Sinai, and the mountain is down there, kind of down in the very northern part of that Red Sea, or Sea of Aqaba, I think they call it, Gulf of Aqaba. All that's Midian, the land of Midian. And we remember that Jethro, his father-in-law, Moses' father-in-law, was a Midianite. Okay? Because of that, they are back to where they start, as far as Moses is concerned. Moses would take the sheep out. He was tending the herds, remember, with his father-in-law's sheep. And some wandered off, and he went there and he saw this burning bush. We're already back to where that was at. God brought them back to where Moses understood, okay, this is what God wants. He wants this happen. So he led them to this mountain because God led them. I mean, he would follow after what the pillar of fire and the cloud by night would take them. The people could go no farther than where their leader took them. God was leading them, but Moses was the one showing them. It says there is a little debate on where this is actually at, the Mount Sinai. There's several, since we don't really have a map of that time of where it was at, but the map that I gave you is where a lot of people, archaeologically wise, think that it is at. Now there's some other places over in that peninsula part of that, but they believe that it's actually not in that Gulf or in that peninsula. It was actually over in the Saudi Arabia, what we would call Saudi Arabia today. And it says it looks like a huge pulpit. The mountains just kind of go up and they go, kind of like in Wyoming. I've never been, but maybe you've seen pictures of that Devil's Tower. It just kind of goes straight up, and then it's right there. It's supposedly, I guess, a volcanic flow or something. I'm not sure. I haven't read. It's been too long since I read about it. But it says this is the correct location of the mountain is probably most likely in this Saudi Arabia. And then it describes it where it's in the ancient land of Midian, as we said. Paul, in Galatians 4:25, actually describes Mount Sinai as being in Arabia. And this Arabia is where we call Saudi Arabia today, and says, though some claim it can be understood as extending to that Sinai Peninsula, that's not normally where it's at. And they call it today, this Arabian mountain, Jebel al-Lawaz, or Lawaz, and that's where they think archaeologically, I can't say that, and historically, that's where the Mount Sinai is at. Bertha, would you read 3 and 4 for us, those verses?
And Moses went up unto God. And the Lord called unto him out of the mountain, saying, Thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, Ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself.
Okay. Why do you think that God brought Moses back to where he started? And there's not a right or wrong answer, we don't know. But I'm just familiar to me. Yeah, familiar. It's familiar. He's back to where he spent 40 years. Yeah, he's at his home, basically, not at the place, but he's back to where he's familiar with everything, and they know they're safe out of Egypt. They know they're over here. They've been safe for a long time, but they're back to where they have been. Moses himself. That gives him comfort. It gives some of the others comfort too, maybe, because they're going, of course, to the promised land. But it tells them there, saying, Thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, You have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. What does the scripture say about eagle's wings? Do you know? Eagle's wings, or eagles. Tells us one place he's going to bear us up, renew our strength like eagles. Many birds, when they handle their young, they'll use their claws. If they're flying, they'll hold them, up while they're flying, if they need to get them away from something. If you read down in here, it'll tell you that, and I think this, I've read this before also, the eagles won't do that. They'll get their chicks or babies and grab them and put them on their back where they can grab hold, and then they fly off. It's a little, to me, a little more, you're relying on the baby to clench, to hold on to mom and dad's back, hold them. But in that way, and it says here that he bears you up on eagle's wings and brought you unto myself. That's
God's protection.
It is his protection. Later on in the New Testament, or in Psalms and some of the others, it tells us that as he gathers a hen with his chicks, the mother will gather them and they'll gather under their wings. It's another protecting feature. So this is just a play on words, if you want to say that, how God is protecting the Israelites. He's trying to show them, okay, I heard your prayer. You was in Egypt for 400 years. Now I'm trying to get you back to your homeland. And this is how I cared for you. It also starts out, and one interesting thing, it says, Thou shalt say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel. Isn't that the same person? He was like Abram. Abram had his name changed from Abram to Abraham. Jacob, as we talked about earlier, Esau and Jacob. Jacob had the 12 sons, and he became Israel. In his early days, what was Jacob? He was a supplanter. That's what his name meant. He was the one that stole his brother's birthright by selling him a bowl of lentils. He also did a couple of other things that, God got his blessing from his father. He cheated him out of that blessing. And so Jacob has gone from being Jacob, the supplanter, to now he's talking about the children of Israel. You've changed from what you used to be into what you are now, what God sees in the children of Israel. He doesn't call them the children of Jacob. Later on he'll call them the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But now he's calling them the children of Israel. Just showing a little bit, maybe, that you've moved on. The people have moved on. You're no longer part of that earlier part Jacob was in his life. and now we're going to get back to serving God, which what Israel did. He followed after, when he went into Egypt, he was saving his family, basically. Joseph, his son, did it, but he had to tell him, okay, it's okay, go down there. He had to accept it, otherwise it wouldn't have happened. So he's telling them that he gave them a message. You see what I did to the Egyptians? You need to understand, if you're serving like the Egyptians, then you're going to get in trouble. You see what I did to them, I can do the same thing for you. And then it goes and tells about the eagle's wings there. It also says it's a metaphor, the eagle's wings, most extensively used in Deuteronomy 32 and 11, where the loving compassion, protection, strength, and watchfulness of God is compared with the eagle's attributes. And then he brought them to himself. He's telling them, I bring you back to where I talked with Moses. Also, this is the same place. You go back further, and they think this is the same place that Abraham was sacrificing Isaac. Was going to sacrifice his son. It was in the wilderness up there around Mount Sinai. That's what I believe. Verses 5 and 6, Iris, can you read those for us?
Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant, then we shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. And ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and an holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel.
Okay. Now he's making, before he was making a covenant with Abraham, right? I'm going to make you a father of many nations. And up until that time, that's what they were going off of. Now he re-emphasized that covenant with the sons and the grandsons as they came on down. Now he's telling the people, I'm going to make a covenant with you. Not just because of Abraham, because of Isaac, because of, Jacob. I'm going to make a covenant with you. You're going to be my treasure, my peculiar treasure. Peculiar doesn't mean different. It does, but it doesn't mean weird. A lot of times we think peculiar is something that's kind of weird. It's set apart. I'm setting you apart to be different from everybody else in the world. And he did that all the way back from Abraham. Okay? Because he started with Abraham. But now he's telling just the children of Israel, I'm going to have a covenant with you. I had a covenant with your great-great-grandfather. Now I'm going to have a covenant with you. And this goes further because Abraham, it's kind of unique. We see that Abraham was following God when he started and he was doing this. Well, now the people, they're going to have to get back to that. They'd been in Egypt for so long, many of them wasn't serving God. They were serving the Egyptian gods. So now he's entering into it, and he's telling them, I'm going to give a covenant with you now. He said, I'm doing it strictly for you. And above all the people, all the different people in the world, I'm going to do it with you. But he says, all the earth is mine. And we know that he created all the earth. And you shall be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. So he's setting them up, telling them, look, this is what I'm going to be. Now they had priests before, but they really didn't have a kingdom, okay, per se. They just had family groups. Abraham's family, and then Isaac's and Israel's, or Jacob's. These are the different ones. Now he's saying, I'm going to build you a nation. Okay? As I told them before, they're going to have a lot of people in it. But there was key piece in that. What was that key piece? Key words. If ye will obey my voice. then he's gonna do what he says. So they have to be able to follow God. This is part of the leading up to here. This is part of the testing, part of the showing them what it is. And in my opinion, I think it's kind of why God didn't chastise them any more than he did. I mean, he didn't really chastise them. He would always, when they would come up with something and Moses would get aggravated at them, he'd just say, okay, let's go do this, let's go do that. Later on, and especially in a couple more chapters, we'll see, he gets pretty hot at them because he's already laid down the law. And now he's getting ready to tell them what it is. So now they're getting ready to reveal this, how to be obedient. He calls it my covenant. You got to keep my covenant. This covenant is greater, it says, than the law itself. The covenant God made with Israel involved both law, sacrifice, and the choice to obey and be blessed, or to disobey and be cursed. So we see that he's given them a choice. You can do this, and you can be blessed, or you can not do it, and you won't be blessed, and you'll be cursed. Apostle Paul tells us in Ephesians 1:18, he wanted the Christians to know how great a treasure they were to God. And he said he prayed that they would know what are the riches of the glory of his inheritance in the saints. So Paul realizes that yes, although they were the chosen, and they are the chosen people of God, this was the beginning of the Israeli nation, if you want to say it that way, the covenant with them. And it talks about being the priests, which are the mediators of God, between God and man. That as Moses was leading them, each one of them is going to become a mediator. Like, not each one, but the priests that's set up are going to become individuals. It says the whole nation was to act as mediators of God's grace to the nations of the earth. God's particularist choice of Israel has a wider universalist purpose. He chose Israel to bring about to the people of the world. But that, as we see, the people of Israel had problems with it, so the people of the world, they had problems with it too. And of course, we know to be a holy nation, it says. Peter in 1 Peter 2:9 reminds us that we are a holy nation, that we may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. Verse 7, darling, I'll read 7, 8, and 9.
And Moses came and called for the elders of the people, and laid before their faces all these words which the Lord commanded him. And all the people answered together and said, all that the Lord hath spoken we will do. And Moses returned the words of the people unto the Lord. And the Lord said unto Moses, Lo, I come unto thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with thee, and believe thee forever. And Moses told the words of the people unto the Lord.
So Moses was called, God told him to call the elders up. And we see this several times, whenever they were leading them out of Egypt, whenever they had problems, the judges, setting up the judges, all this. He'd call for the leaders, call for the elders, and then they would distribute down through, some of the people, probably many of the people never heard directly from Moses. They heard from their leaders of their groups, or their leaders of their families, or whatever it was. In this particular situation, God's telling them, I'm going to tell all the people. And the people answered together that they will do what they hear. Moses returned the words of the people unto the Lord. Once they said, Moses is acting as a mediator, going back and forth. Okay, now they said they was going to follow you. So now the Lord says, I'm going to come into you on a thick cloud. Okay, now they're familiar with this because this cloud has been following them, leading them, it's been guiding them from their original leaving of Egypt. But now the thick cloud is going to descend, not upon them, but upon the mountain here in just a few more verses, to where they are actually going to hear God speaking to Moses. So they'll understand. Some people still may not have the opinion that Moses is leading, God, he's not hearing from God. He's leading us on a wild goose chase type thing. Yeah, he may have had a dream and all this, but God's making sure that I'm going to come to thee in a thick cloud. And the people will hear when I speak with thee. When he's talking to Moses, they're going to hear. Oh, forgot the computer's on.
Sure.
And believe thee forever.
Oh,
So
wow.
Moses told these words unto the people of the Lord, unto the Lord. So he's still echoing these back and forth. So he's telling the people here, it says the people are later challenged to receive the covenant again after they heard its terms in verses 24, or chapter 24, when we pick it up in a few more chapters, and they received it again. So he tells them to it once, he tells them to it again later on, what he is expecting. Says that they will do it. Now it says that their answer was sincere, but it's ignorant. And that's true. A lot of times we don't know exactly what we're getting into when somebody asks us to do something and we kind of get in over our head. We may not exactly know all the situations that's happening. So, but we know that because of that, God's going to be leading them or leading us. So it says down there, all that Jehovah has spoken, we will do. And we will fail. But God never fails. He waits and pursues his own way of grace and government. Now that didn't catch God off guard because they failed, did it? He knew that they were not going to follow through, so he kept on and he kept showing them, and ultimately he had a different way. That's what we're getting ready to celebrate here in just a few days. So Moses here acted as a true priest, as an intermediary between God and the people. Yet God spoke audibly to Moses, so everyone would know that it was really God speaking to him, to Moses. Exodus 10, 11, 12, and 13. Do you want to read that for us, Janet?
And the Lord said unto Moses, Go unto the people, and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes, and be ready against the third day. For the third day the Lord will come down in the sight of all the people upon Mount Sinai. And thou shalt set bounds unto the people round about, saying, Take heed to yourselves, that you go not up into the mount, or touch the border of it. Whosoever toucheth the mount shall be surely put to death. There shall not a hand touch it, but he shall surely be stoned or shot through. Whether it be beast or man, they shall not live. When the trumpet soundeth long, they shall come up to the mounts.
Okay. Now as we go through, as we said, we started out, they didn't have a whole lot of rules when they came out of Egypt. They were supposed to follow what Moses told them, and they did. And then he gave them some more rules. Okay, you go out and gather the bread in the morning, each morning, except the sixth day, you gather twice as much. He told them all these, each and every one, he's building up on these things that he wants them to do, and it's testing them a little bit to see if they'll do what he wants them to do, if they'll be consistent.
If they don't do the small things, how's he going to know they're going to do them?
That's right.
Yeah.
How is he going to follow them? If he can't even follow them on getting their bread,
One small order.
That's right. So here he's telling them now some new things. Okay, you're going to have some new rules, if you want to say it that way, to abide by in order to hear and to see. You want to see God, you want to hear from God, you'll be able to, but you can't do it. You got to be able to exactly follow what I'm telling you. So they got to consecrate themselves. 3 days. Doesn't tell us exactly here. In the next ones it'll tell us. But it's going to, it wants them to wash their clothes. That's easy enough. I mean, they've been traveling for a long time, and they wanted them to get clean. They do that, even the priests today, before they go into the holy place. They will go, and before they do their priestly duties, they will cleanse themselves in the bath that they have of water.
Well, they were probably more than ready to do that.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they'd clean themselves,
Yeah.
you know, along the way. But this is to set it differently, to set it up that this, you're doing something, it's kind of like today, we don't so much do it, but some of the other churches do it. When they baptize, they put on the white robes,
Yeah.
you know, to do a baptism. There are some places, it's just kind of a ceremony, just something that indicates that you're willing to do what God says to do. And that's what here, he's consecrating them to be different. He said, I'm going to make you a different people, a peculiar people. So he's telling them that in this particular way, I'm going to have you do certain things a little differently. He'd already done that with Abraham, okay, with the circumcision. There's going to be other things as they go along that they're going to have to set aside. They've already gone through the Passover. They're going to keep that. That's a new sign for them too. He told them you need to keep that yearly. Remember that. So as they go up to the mountain, somehow they had to draw a boundary around it and said that you should stay behind this line. Don't go past this line, this row of trees, this whatever it is. Don't go past it, because if you do, you're going to get killed. It's one of those things. And it's one of the, we don't see anybody in this particular instance being killed, but it was, again, testing them to see if they will follow his directions. Tell them what this is going to be. Not even a hand shall touch it. Going up the side of the mountain. Somebody we see could later on, in David's time, when he stumbled, Uriah stumbled and touched the ark because he thought it was going to fall, he died. Certain things are given to us. God tells us to do it, and he's pretty serious about us doing them, following what those are after. So it says that they could not be touched. They had to be executed, either with stones or with arrows. They'd shoot them through. It was talking about not a gun, because they didn't have them back then, but an arrow. They would kill them if they went past that. That was their duty. And it does tell about when the trumpet sounds. And at this particular time, the trumpet sounded. It's God's invitation for the people to come forward. Okay, they'd come up to a point. And here again, you got 2 million people, so everybody crowding forward. You want to make sure don't get past this boundary. They may be pushed forward, you know. But he's going to call a trumpet, and they're going to come up and listen to what God has to say. 14 and 15, you want to read that for us, Harold?
And Moses went down from the mountain to the people, and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes. And he said unto the people, Be ready against the third day, come not at your wives.
Okay. So they went down. He got this message from God, and he told them, go down, tell the people. Moses went down and told the people, and they started washing the clothes. It gave them 3 days' time to do all this, okay, to get ready. So on the third day, that's what they're going to, 2 days to do it. Third day, they're going to be ready when the time calls. So they sanctified the people. The people immediately prepared for the revelation that God had promised for that third day. And they were basically going to be meeting God that day. And it said the rest of the scriptures don't really teach us anything about inherent uncleanliness and sexual relations, But this command was peculiar for this event. In this situation, God wanted the people to demonstrate their desire for purity by putting on clean clothes and restraining all desires, even legitimate desires, for that time period. It says men must come before God with the best preparation that they can get. Okay, 16 through 19. And it came to pass on the third day that there were thunders and lightnings, a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people was in the camp trembled. Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the nether part of the mount. And Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire. And the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. And when the voice of the trumpet sounded long, and waxed louder and louder, Moses spake, and God answered him by voice. So we see that he was telling them, today's the day. And as he got ready, the kind of preliminaries was there were thunderings and lightnings. And this cloud descended upon the mountain. And out of the mountain, it was basically a smoke. Said the Lord came down as fire in the thick cloud upon the smoke. So they could see that, they could see and hear, and then they heard the trumpet. And it was getting louder and louder, ready for them to come and meet with God. It was announcing the arrival of God, is what it was. So it said the people in the camp trembled. Well, if something's happened like that, we know what a tornado's like. If it's coming around and lightning and thundering and everything rumbling. You know, there at the house, every once in a while, they'll shoot off a bunch of dynamite down there at the quarry, and that's over two, almost 3 miles away from us. You can still, it'll shake the house every once in a while. You can hear it. And if I'm sitting up against that south wall, it'll and then it'll shake the walls a little bit. Hadn't done that so much here recently, but they used to do it quite a bit. When I was working, Darla would call and say, "Well, they've shot out another bunch of rock." So things happen like that, and it's pretty kind of scary if you don't know what's going on.
If you were asleep, you'd be.
Yeah, well, they don't do it while they're asleep. They just do it during the day. Yeah. So Moses brought the people out of their camp. They were camped around the mountain, but he brought them out of the camp up to the base of the mountain, and it says where they could hear, smell, see, and virtually taste the fire which covered the mountain, as well as feel the earth shake under their feet when the whole mountain quaked greatly. And then the trumpet sounded long, become louder and louder. And then Moses spoke out to God, and God answered him. And in that point, Israel heard God speak to Moses. He heard them. I don't know exactly what was said. It doesn't record that, but it just, we can kind of use our imagination, whatever you want to think, that it confirmed to Israel this covenant with God. And said, the Lord came down upon Mount Sinai on the top of the mount, and the Lord called Moses up to the top of the mount, and Moses went up. Now, what do you think about Moses? As far as he can tell, the whole mountain top's on fire, and he's going to go up into that smoke. Not seeing whatever is going to happen. But he'd already told him.
I can't see.
Yeah, he'd already told him what's going on, and the miracles that had happened before, the being as dark as night, and all these different pestilences that was upon him. I'm sure the way was cleared. Moses, was going up into it, and the way was cleared, so Moses could see just enough to where he wouldn't hurt himself or injure himself, is what I would guess. But it says it took courage for Moses to go up in the midst of all that, the lightnings and the fire, the earthquakes, and the
The Lord
smoke.
wasn't gonna let anything happen to it anyway.
No, he wasn't. But it's just showing the people who he was, who God was, and his power, his majesty. Excuse me. You want to go ahead and read 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25, Iris? That'll finish us up.
And the Lord said unto Moses, Go down, charge the people, lest they break through unto the Lord to gaze, and many of them perish. And let the priests also which come near to the Lord sanctify themselves, lest the Lord break forth upon them. And Moses said unto the Lord, The people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for thou chargest, is that what that?
Yeah, charges us. Mhm.
Saying, Set bounds about the mount and sanctify it. And the Lord said unto him, Away, get thee down, and thou shalt come up, thou and Aaron with thee. But let not the priests and the people break through to come up unto the Lord, lest he break forth upon them. So Moses went down unto the people and spake unto them.
Now, he may have had, well, we know he knows all. God does. But he told Moses, go down there and remind them, don't come up to the mountain. Can you just kind of imagine some people, I wonder if I could just squeeze up there a little bit and maybe see a glimpse of him, see the top. And so he's sending him back down there saying, no, don't do that. Don't come up. I'm not here for you to see. Only one's gonna, and Moses doesn't see him either. And Aaron. All they see is the fire and the smoke and the lightnings and the thunderings in there. But he tells them, well, they're not going to come up here. We already told them. We set a fence up here for them. I don't know, they may have built a fence or built some kind of bounds, it says, around the mount. Told them, don't go past this. And he goes, no, you don't understand. These people are curious. They want, just by chance, they want to see what's going on. So he told them, go down there and tell them. And they'd already set up, he said, lest the priests, but let not the priests and the people break through. So there had already been some priests set up. Okay, but he told them, just get Moses and grab Aaron, and you guys come back up here. I want to talk to y'all. So Moses went down unto the people and spake unto them. He told them, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to occur. It says that this is, in that part C, it says, do not let the priests and the people break through to come up to the Lord. The whole idea at Sinai was exclusion. Exodus 19 brings us the awe and fear of each Israelite must have felt at Mount Sinai. It's easy to think that this alone inspired them to live a holy lifestyle. Many today feel we need to get more of the thunder and fire and trembling of Mount Sinai into the people as a way of keeping them from sin. Yet not 40 days from this whole nation would have an orgy around a golden calf, praising it as the God that brought them out of Egypt. So, after they had seen all this miracle happen, just a little over a month and a week later, they completely forgot what was going on. Who was God? Who was, God was still meeting with Moses up there at that time. Moses was up there. We'll get into it next chapter. But Moses was up there for 40 days, dealing with God or listening to God. It says Sinai speaks of fear and terror, but Zion speaks of love and forgiveness. This is a comparison of the law and grace. Okay? Sinai is of the law, and Zion, which is the New Zion, New Jerusalem, is of forgiveness and grace. Sinai is a dry desert, but Zion is the city of the living God. Sinai, with all its fear and power, is earthly. Mount Zion we come to is heavenly and spiritual. Sinai, only Moses could come and meet God. At Zion, there is an innumerable company, a great assembly. Sinai had guilty men in fear, but Zion has just men made perfect. Sinai, Moses is the mediator, but at Zion, Jesus is the mediator. Sinai put forth an old covenant ratified by the blood of animals. The new covenant in Zion was ratified by the blood of Jesus Christ. Sinai was all about barriers and exclusion, and Zion's about invitation. Sinai is about the law, Zion is about grace. So we need to understand this was kind of setting up for what was coming later on, but it's trying to set the people up to understand the rules. Because that's what Moses comes down with. Later on, he comes down with the 10 Commandments. And he tells them all the rules. He tells them all these things, and then later on they build upon that. And I think that's about all I have.
Very good, though. Very good.
Very good.
You always do a good teaching job, young man.
Well,
I wondered if there was sort of a natural amphitheater there for whatever, because, I understand God's voice being able to be heard by
Right.
everyone, but I wonder on 2 million people how everyone could hear Moses.
everyone heard. That's right. It had to have been something. That
Yeah.
God magnified it or something. It goes back to even on the 5,000. When you get 5,000 people there,
Yeah.
when Jesus was preaching to 5,000. I take this mic off, you guys can't hear. You're about 10 or 15 feet from me. And I know I don't have a very loud voice, but it had to be the acoustics of that.
Something had to amplify Moses.
Exactly. And it could be natural or it could have been supernatural
Yeah.
at that particular time. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, it had to have happened that way where everybody could hear.
Well, I was wondering how long it took him to get up that mountain.
Well, I was reading about that today and about where they thought it was and all this place. And they said the mountain's about 2,800 feet high. And it said it's one of the lowest, if this is the right place.
Is that a mile?
It's not, well, it's half mile, about a half mile, 5,200 feet's a mile. So it's a little over a half a mile up. But we don't know how high he actually had to go if he went all the way up. Now, he was there. We don't know if the burning bush was actually on the top of the mountain or on the side of the mountain. The movie shows one thing. We don't know what it was. But it's one of those things that we don't really know. But I think he was probably going back to a place he had known before. That's what I'm guessing. God was leading him on a path. That's one of the things. Because he was in this area, he kind of knew the mountain. I kind of think that's where he felt comfortable. At least Moses had been there. He knew what was going
But
on.
wouldn't you also had to have some kind of a podium to stand on for all the people to hear him and see him?
Not necessarily. That's what Harold was referring to. That once he goes up into the smoke, they don't hear nothing. But they don't see nothing. They hear both sides of the story as what God was talking. Now, we don't know how much that he let them know. He talked there for a little while, but for 40 days, it's like, after 5 minutes, we're zonked out of things today. 40 days, people would have, okay, I'm gone. I heard God. I'm not worried about it. I'm going back home.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's kind of the way we are today. That's all I can say. That our attention span's not very long. So, but I don't think maybe they heard the whole thing. I think they heard some, the trumpet, the voices coming from God, the voice coming from God telling him what's going on. And then after that, the lightning stuff may have got too fierce and they didn't hear anything else. That's what I
They're
get.
scared too.
Oh yeah, they're still scared. So, well, everybody
Hello,
have
Brother Bill, we love you.
everybody have a Merry Christmas, and we'll see you Sunday.
Merry Christmas, Brother Bill. Merry Christmas, everyone.